Welcome to Three Distinct Knocks. I'm David Riley.
I'm Nicholas Harvey.
And I'm Patrick Harvey.
And tonight's special guest is...
Hi, I'm Chuck Dunning.
Hi, Chuck. If you've watched our previous podcasts, and I know you've watched them all, so you'll know that we usually begin with a rant, and tonight it will come as no surprise, I'm ranting. If you've listened to our previous podcasts, you will have heard me say that Freemasonry is a progressive science. That is, a body of knowledge in which one makes progress through study, effort, and exploration. While the moment of initiation is important and should be a life-changing event, it does not magically confer upon a man all the knowledge of the system of morality illustrated by symbols and veiled by allegory that is Freemasonry. Symbols are used by the craft to teach its lessons because it is possible for a symbol to convey layers and nuances of meaning in a way that more direct methods of teaching cannot. Each Mason should work to develop his own relationship with the symbols of the craft, to find the layers of meaning that speak to his experience, and to discover how those symbols change in their meaning as his life progresses. The symbols, as expressive as they are, do not reveal their lessons at once. They require study, thought, and consideration. Think of the symbols of the craft as people. You meet them in their degree. Over time, you come to know them. Your relationship with them changes and deepens. In time, you get to know each other better. Aspects of them that were not obvious at once become apparent. Eventually, perhaps you begin to finish one another's sentences, and having known them, your life is changed in unexpected ways. Many esoterically inclined Masons, and someday we'll do a whole show on how much I dislike that designation and all its variants, read many books on the symbolism and philosophy of Freemasonry. I would be the last to discourage this. If you really want to see the light of avarice in my eyes, show me a really good book about Freemasonry that I've yet to read. Freemasonry, however, is not a purely intellectual exercise. It is experiential, it is emotional, it is relational. For developing a personal relationship with the symbols of the craft, and thereby to develop a personal understanding of Freemasonry, meditation is a powerful tool, perhaps as useful as regular attendance at lodge. And speaking about good books about Freemasonry, tonight's guest, Brother Chuck Dunning, has written an excellent book about Freemasonry called Contemplative Masonry by C.R. Dunning Jr., available at an Amazon location near you. In fact, you can open your browser while you're listening to this and order it right now, which I strongly recommend. Mine is autographed. If you go to meet Chuck Dunning, I'm sure he will autograph yours too. Welcome, Chuck.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciated your words there, and thank you for plugging the book and having me on the show.
So let's start with the very basics. What's meditation?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you'll get lots of different answers on that from many people. I think one of the most basic ways of explaining meditation that I have found that works for me is it's the intentional practice of awareness. And it is awareness that is tuned in a particular way, and different meditations will tune awareness to function in different ways. Sometimes it is with a really intense focus on a particular thing for the purpose of understanding that thing as deeply and fully as possible. And other times it may be tuning awareness to a state of exceptional openness, where one is just simply open to whatever it is that is coming into the mind, and not holding on to it either, but allowing it to come in and allowing it to go. That is openness. And there are advantages to both of those. I guess you could call them extremes of mental operation, and lots of other variations. The use of imagination, for example, um, focusing awareness on emotional states. All of these things are ways of meditating. Um, and and that's really broad and kind of a big umbrella statement, I think, to help begin to understand what meditation really is.
So I was talking to a brother about your book, and he asked a really good question. He was like, well, what does meditation have to do with Freemasonry? No one's never ever talked to me about meditation and Freemasonry.
Yeah, that's in our Blue Lodge rituals. The word, although in some jurisdictions it is used, more commonly in Freemasonry, we find, well, particularly the word contemplation or contemplate or contempt. And actually, the word contemplative in its broad sense has essentially the same meaning as the word meditative or meditation. Meditation, contemplation are essentially toward the same kind of mental states that that one can intentionally develop within oneself for the purposes of understanding things more deeply and experiencing things more completely. So, for example, when our ritual tells us that it is the contemplative Mason that is inspired to view the handiworks of the Creator and thereby experience life and nature more fully and more reverently, and to come up with deeper understandings about this world that we live in, the ritual is telling us in that case that it is the Mason who really intentionally focuses his awareness on nature and pays very deep attention to it, who gains more from the experience of nature than one who might just otherwise, kind of experience it in the background of the other things that he puts his attention on in daily life.
So how did you come to meditation? Was it Freemasonry that brought meditation into your life?
No, actually, in a way, in a very real way, in fact, meditation has always been a part of my life. You know, um,
If anyone
one
else,
really common. Well, I'm gonna start this explanation here in a way that makes it accessible to many people, because anybody who has been taught to pray, to close their eyes, to focus their thoughts on whatever it is that is going to be the subject of their prayer or the object of their prayer, that's a form of meditation, and that's something that I grew up with. Was daily prayer in my family, and then certainly church experiences of prayer. And so, in that sense, I have been meditating as long as I can remember. But in terms of like formally learning how to focus my mind and intentionally doing so with the idea that that's what I was doing was adjusting my consciousness for some particular purpose, that really didn't begin for me intentionally until I was in my 20s. And that came about as a result of two things. One was I was working as a caseworker in a substance abuse rehab facility where one of the counselors taught me a meditation technique that I could use with my clients and that I could guide them through. And at the same time, I was taking a philosophy course called the Ancient Wisdom Traditions, in which my professor was also a teacher of meditation, and so I was taking his seminars in meditation in addition to the philosophy course that I was taking, and that's really when my, I guess you would say, formal practices in meditation actually began.
So if there's a Mason who has no experience with meditation and they're intrigued by the idea of incorporating meditation into their lives as a part of deepening their Masonic understanding, what would you say to such a man?
Um, I must have missed part of your question there from about
Sorry.
some sort. Okay.
If um, if if there's someone who has no experience with meditation and wants to
Hmm.
incorporate it as a part of their practice and use it to deepen their understanding of Freemasonry, what kind of advice might you give to such a Mason?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'm kind of tempted to say, well, first buy my book. But I think it's something that any Mason can do, is to just to try to get used to slowing down, um, very, very careful attention to what they do as a Mason, to what they say to the words that they say, particularly in the experience of ritual. Um, I think that that's a really good starting place. And also, to outside of ritual, to just practice silent sitting, to be still and get used to paying attention to the mind and how it works, to just is really, really good meditative practice, and something that even the most advanced meditators that I know do on a routine basis.
So speaking of relating it to ritual, something you and I have spoke about a couple times is my experience with when I was going through the degrees in Massachusetts was before the degrees in the preparation room. My mentor, my sponsor, my mentor pushed me aside and he told me to spend a few minutes and to become present and just to breathe and just to think about what I was doing and why I wanted to become a Mason, and uh, just really to take some time by myself. And that was after I was almost late and we were rushing, and it's in downtown Boston, so it's like public transportation, then running through downtown Boston and then up all these stairs and elevators and running. And he basically just told me to just relax, take some time, and just breathe. And I thought that was really great to contemplate what I was going to go through. Um, we had Chuck was down in Florida last week, and he did an event, and somebody mentioned that they have a couple guys stand outside of the preparation room and basically hold anybody back from going in there and messing with the candidates or talking to them or anything beforehand, just so they could take some time and again just be still and just think about what they're doing in a nice calm setting. And I think that if a lodge would take a few minutes before a degree, and the WM or whoever just tells the lodge, like, hey guys, listen, this is what we're doing. Let's focus. But before we do that, before we start this off, let's just take a few minutes and just breathe, remember where we are, and let's just go slow. I think one of our problems, both in the lodge and at night, or in life in general, is that we go really fast through everything. And our candidates will only will only experience the degrees as a candidate once. And you had said something a while ago where I mentioned
Indubitably.
Oh, of course. Where I mentioned that a lodge was getting out early, and they were like, "Yay! Our lodge meeting's only 2 hours long tonight." And you had a great response, but I can't remember.
Well, offhand, I would say my response to that would be how truly sad that they didn't want it to last longer.
Yes.
That's always one of the things that is a pet peeve of mine, is this idea that our goal is to get our Freemasonry over. That's never my goal.
Yeah.
My goal is to spend time with my brothers. My goal is to experience the ritual and the lodge, to soak it in. But in particular, in attending lodge, to have that moment. When lodge is open at its very best, it takes you out of time and place. It's the one place in the world where I shut off my cell phone.
That's very true.
I don't silence my cell phone. I turn it off. It's the one place in the world where I will not be checking my email. I will not be, I am there and there alone, instead of spreading my consciousness over 2/3 of the planet. And I think it's really sad when guys don't take the opportunity. It's the same thing as when the officers go out to get the candidate. I remember when I was worshipful master, I frequently turned to the chaplain and was like, what are they doing out there that it's taking them so long? And because I have no clue why it takes seemingly 6 hours to get a candidate to stand up and follow you.
Right.
It seems, but I wish I would have taken if I would have been thinking, and if I wouldn't have been nervous, and if I wouldn't have allowed myself to get so ratcheted up by the process of getting ready for lodge and the 1,000 details, that's a great moment to just take a breath and to try to be present.
Yeah.
And to enjoy the fact that you're in a place that's a sanctuary. We put a guy with a sword outside the door so nobody will bug us. We should take advantage of that.
Right.
And something that was interesting this weekend when we were at the York Rite degree. You were there. Of course you were. we had so much fun, right? We had a great time there. We met so many people. Do you realize nobody took any photos?
Yeah.
There's no photos of the event.
Yeah, there was.
Who took it? Well, we got the main photo at the end.
No,
Yeah.
someone was walking. Well, I don't know about in the lodge room, but somebody was walking around with that little tripod thing,
Yeah.
taking things. But I don't know. Up in the lodge room, I don't think anyone took photos.
But even when we were chatting, or when we did the table and the thing, and
The table and the thing.
The table was. No, somebody was taking photos. Somebody
Yeah,
was,
but
I don't know if they're out.
But for the most part, everybody there had a cell phone that could have been taking photos.
Yeah.
But they were enjoying the moment.
right.
Right. Yeah.
So does that count as meditation?
Well, yes, in a broad sense, it does. It certainly counts as contemplative practice. One of the buzzwords in pop culture right now is mindfulness, and mindfulness is an English word for an ancient practice that's been used by lots of different spiritual and philosophical traditions throughout history and in different cultures. And basically, mindfulness means that whatever you're doing, that's what you're thinking about. And whatever you're thinking about, that's what you're doing. You're as fully present in that moment as you can possibly be. And I think you are exactly right in saying that that's the kind of shift that we need to make when we move into the lodge room. I mean, in a lot of our jurisdictions, our ritual calls the lodge room a sacred retreat. And you're right. We use ceremonial processes to set it off as a sacred space, and we refer to it as apart from the profane world, right? The profane world being everything outside of the lodge. And we're not supposed to bring into the lodge our profane attitudes and behaviors. We're supposed to make a shift when we come into the lodge, and so bringing ourselves into the present moment is very much a contemplative practice, and it's something that everybody can do, from the candidate for his EA degree all the way through the Master Mason who has been a member of that lodge for the longest period of time. Making that shift is an important thing.
And I would kind of two things to kind of piggyback off that. When I was going through my EA degree and I was in the ante room, the gentleman who was sitting there, who was kind of going over the, what you're about to do, this is what it's for, just kind of broad statement, not to give us too much or too little. And the one thing he said to me that has always stuck with me, and he's like, I'm going to tell you something, and then I just don't want no one to, there was three of us. He's like, I don't want no one to say nothing. I just want everyone to think about this. What you're going through right now when you walk through this door, everybody in the lodge room has done it. Everybody who's ever been a Mason has done what you're about to do. In this moment of your life, this is how you connect with every other Mason ever. So remember that when you're doing your thing in the lodge room, don't get caught up on what I'm supposed to do. Just literally close your eyes, listen, and just go with whatever's happening, and that's going to connect you to everybody else. And that's why we always say, like, oh, they've done the same thing I did. I remember when he said that. Every other degree after that, I've always tried to do that. Is just remember that what I'm going to do, everybody's done. That's the one thing that connects us, and that's how I always felt so strong to it. But Chuck, I would say a question for you that say I've never meditated before, and I'm like, you know what, I really want to get into it. I really want to understand it. If someone's never done it, say I've never done it, what would be your advice for me? Like, what mindset do I have to be in? Do I have to have certain music playing? Do I have to be in a certain place, area, time to get into a meditation mindset? Like, how would that go for someone who's never done it?
Those are fantastic questions, and they actually address some pretty big misunderstandings about meditation that a lot of people have. But let me just simply answer your question to begin with here, and that is that in general, of course, it's going to be easier to settle down and to become more quiet and still if you don't have a lot of things going on around you. And so, if you're just beginning in the process of learning the processes of meditation and beginning to practice meditation, then finding a quiet place is a good idea. But it doesn't have to be any place particularly special. It's helpful if you can use the same place all the time when you try to meditate. But even that's not necessary. Um, but having a quiet place and a time when you can be relatively assured that you're not going to be interrupted or demands are going to be made of you, and there are things that you can do to help that, letting the people around you know that you need this time and space, making sure that you have your phone turned off, and those kinds of things. Music can be very helpful. There are lots of options there. Generally, you want something kind of slow, low, and repetitive. Um, so in classical music, one of my favorite recommendations is any Adagio by Bach is probably going to be a good a good thing to help you with meditation. There are lots of meditation tapes out there, or CDs, tapes. I'm dating myself here. Uh, there and all kinds of electronic formats that you can just download and use on your phone. I mean, there are meditation apps that can help with that sort of thing. But I would be cautious about becoming too reliant upon technology to help you with your meditation. Because really meditation is about being able to turn ourselves more fully within. And the more practiced and skilled you become at meditation, the better you become at just turning yourself within as an act of will. I mean, you just decide that that's what you're going to do. And the more you practice this, then the easier it becomes to just ignore all of the external stimuli. And that's really one of the things that ultimately is a good byproduct of meditative practice. That actually leads to one of the misunderstandings that came up as I was listening to your question. And that is, a lot of people think you're not doing good meditation unless you're in some sort of state of mind where you're not thinking thoughts. There's been a lot of misunderstanding about masonry. It's like if you're sitting there and your mind is going and you're hearing yourself thinking all kinds of thoughts and you're being aware of the sounds in the room and you're telling yourself, oh, I'm not doing it right, then basically you're just creating more stress and distraction for yourself. And that starts with the expectation that you shouldn't have any thoughts, that you shouldn't experience distraction. And so, right up front, one of the first recommendations I have for anybody that's trying to learn how to meditate is just let go of that expectation that it is good meditation to be aware of what's actually happening in your mind at the moment, to be an observer of your own mind. And if you observe yourself being distracted, you're doing a good job. And if you observe that you've got all kinds of thoughts and tangents going on in your head, you're doing a good job. That's a really good starting place for anybody that is wanting to begin meditation.
You and I have talked about the fact that a book that was extremely influential in my life was The Cloud of Unknowing.
Yes.
And its approach to that, it comes from a medieval Christian perspective. So it's a book about religious contemplation, obviously. But the author of the book says that when thoughts like that come into your head, you should say, "Get thee behind me, Satan." And when you finally get to the point where you experience that stillness and you think to yourself, "Oh, I'm doing it," you should say, "Get behind me, Satan," because it's the distraction. I've had meditation teachers, Baruti, for example, taught me, acknowledge the thought and let it go.
Yes.
Because if you try to suppress it and push it down, you're just paying more attention to the thought.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think there are a couple of ways that I like to talk about how to become kind of to get the shift in consciousness where you experience more of the stillness and silence and less of the chatter of the mind. And one of those ways is to think about how everybody knows what this is like. You can turn on music in the house or you can turn on the television in the house, and then you start focusing on something else. Maybe you're cleaning the house, maybe you're trying to read a book or something like that. And before you know it, you're not even aware that the television is on anymore. You have no idea what the commercials have been. You don't know what's been happening on the show that's on. You are completely tuned out of the television. You can do the same thing in your own consciousness with those parts of yourself that are doing all of that chatter all the time. And one of the ways that you do that is just by really being as intentionally open as possible. Now, that may sound kind of paradoxical. Well, if I'm being open, that means I'm just allowing all of that stuff to go on. Well, yes, but if you focus on the openness itself and you keep drawing your attention back to openness and being open, then the other stuff starts to fade into the background. And here's where the other analogy comes in that I really like to use. And that is, if you can think of your thoughts in your mind as analogous to words on a page, then what you realize is that the page is that silent space within your mind where all of these thoughts are coming and going. That silence is always there, just like the space on the page. The whiteness of the page is always there within the letters, between the letters, around the letters. And you can focus on the whiteness and not see the words on the page, not really words, it's just there. But if you're focusing on the whiteness of the page itself, that's where your attention is. It can happen in your conscious awareness of your mind working. These thoughts are going through, they're going through this blank page of your consciousness, this open page. If you just keep drawing your attention back to that over and over and over again, then eventually it just becomes kind of a habit that you lose awareness. The words stop grabbing your attention and holding your mind captive.
So
that makes sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, that's a really useful way to think about it, because then to some degree you can, in all manners of places and times and settings, you can recapture some part. It may be easier in some circumstances than others, but you can recapture some part of that meditative state.
Yes, that's a really good point. Absolutely, you can. You can wind up carrying that with you through all sorts of things. You're absolutely right. There are also times when we really need to focus our minds in different ways. I mean, if the house is on fire and that's not the time to be focusing on the stillness and the silence. I mean, that's the time to be thinking about, okay, what needs to happen right now and what are the correct act. And so we're going to engage a different part of our consciousness for that. But most of the time, most of the things that we do, there's plenty of opportunity for tuning into the stillness and the silence.
So you heard me argue that you can gain a better understanding of the symbols of Freemasonry through meditation.
Hmm.
I believe that from personal experience to be true.
I agree.
What are some of the other benefits of meditation? I know levitating, being in contact with ancient aliens, the universe sending
Okay, we thought you were serious for a second.
the universe sending
Woo, okay.
and
David, we're about to have a problem.
the lizard men in the middle of the earth making you the Queen of England. Those are all things that we know can happen through meditation. But we're some of the other benefits.
And not to mention sex with demons. You got to throw that in there too.
Forgot that one.
I've been meditating all along. I have to say this.
Yeah, I hear you, and I appreciate your sense of humor in all of this. Yeah, so there is a huge range of benefits for meditation that go way beyond the extremes on the one hand, the really mild extremes of relaxation and being calm and settling down and quieting your mind, and on the other end, all of these wild things that have been associated with meditation by popular culture in one form or another, and so I mean, let's just take a look at some of the physiological benefits. There's been lots of studies and research that has shown that a regular practice of meditation brings great benefits in terms of lowering blood pressure, reducing heart rate, increasing oxygen levels in the blood, reducing stress overall, which then has great effects. When you reduce stress, you lower your cortisol levels in the body, and then that has great effects in lots of different ways. There are wonderful chemicals that get released in the brain when you meditate, and particularly with different kinds of meditation. So, for example, when you're meditating on the feelings of love, or if you're thinking about your meditation is focused on meaningful relationships, people that you really care about, you start to experience the release of oxytocin, which is it's often called the love hormone, I think is the phrase that's used for it. But it's the chemical that's released in moments of intimacy with people that leads to a sense of bonding and belonging and deep caring and compassion for each other. And that's something that can happen in states of meditation. So there are all these kinds of physiological benefits, but then in terms of psychological benefits, in terms of like how your mind actually functions, the practice of meditation can bring with it the ability to focus your mind in ways that you previously may have never been able to do. Actually, before I started meditating, I exhibited a lot of the characteristics of a person with attention deficit disorder. I had a hard time in school because I couldn't sit still, because my mind easily wandered, because I was more interested in what was happening outside the window than I was in what was, there in front of me. And I'm talking about as a college student. And then after I started the practice of meditation, I realized one day that all of a sudden I was focusing my mind and able to control it and concentrate on things for long periods of time in ways that I had never been able to do when I was younger and before I started practicing meditation. And I've heard lots of other people give testimony to that as well. The ability to be aware of self-defeating thoughts, of patterns in how I respond to things, all of those things come from this really basic practice of just observing your own mind and paying attention to how it works and what its patterns are. There's so much psychological benefit that comes from that. And then if we start to use forms of meditation that involve imagination, we can find imagination and intuition. We can find all kinds of opportunities for developing our creativity. And this directly relates to looking at symbols and trying to find other possible meanings for symbols. The use of imagination, just and the faculties of creativity, can really be amplified through the practice of meditation. And that means that for a Mason, gaining deeper understanding and awareness of what the symbols can mean to him and how they can affect his life. And I know that's exactly one of the things that you said we should be using meditation for as Masons.
I think that's, it has made for me a great deal of difference in my approach to ritual as an officer in the lodge to approach memorization not as a task that I'm trying to just cram the words into my head so that I can spit them out, but to approach memorization as a part of a meditative practice where the words become the purpose of memorization then becomes to make the ritual a part of myself. And a side benefit is that I can deliver those words to the candidate in a meaningful way. That's made all the difference to me. And
yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we think about the words of ritual, most of the time our words are describing things that are very easy to visualize. Now, not everybody has the power to see in their imaginations. That's a rare be able to see in your imagination, but most of us have that ability. And if we allow those words to give rise to images, if we go along with that, because it happens naturally for most of us, if we go along with that, that enhances our experience, and the images and the words actually reinforce each other. It makes it easier to remember the words when we see the images in our mind.
But it also makes memorization something that's a benefit to me personally, as opposed to something that I'm doing because I'm an officer and I'm required to do it.
Yes.
And I think that, it's a difference in mindset that to me justifies the American practice of memorizing, which isn't a universal practice.
Right. Memorization definitely has some benefits, but you're absolutely right. If we're not taking the time to actually think about the meanings of the words, to experience the symbols that we are calling to the imagination, to interact with them internally in every possible way, if we're not taking the time to do that, then so much of the meaning of the words and the potential of those words to transform our lives, and that's what we're really talking about. I mean, our shorthand thing is we say Masonry takes good men and makes them better. That's just a really simple way for talking about transformation of a human being. And if we really want to be transformed by our Masonic experience, then we should engage that experience as fully as possible in the way that you've just described.
So, Chuck, for you or anyone here, how do you feel about using, like, if we're going to get into a meditation mindset, how do you feel, or anyone here, about using certain objects to help you meditate? I know certain people may use, like, the Buddha thing. Oh, it has to be near me and stuff like that. Is that something that people could use, or something that anyone's used?
Yeah, I think that there are all kinds of objects that people can use as aids for meditation. I mean, one very simple example of an object that's useful for meditation is a candle, right? You just light a candle, and then being able to focus on the flame can help a person begin to get centered. And then you close your eyes after you've done that, and you're just rolling into a deeper and deeper process of getting centered and getting still. Some people ring a bell at the beginning of their meditation, and the actual act of picking up the bell and striking it very mindfully is that shift. And I think that the objects that we use in Masonry can help us do that. So think about, for example, when officers put on their jewels, that's a moment for them to remind themselves of what that jewel symbolizes about their office. And in that moment to tune in more deeply into what their role is as that officer. When we put on our aprons, a lot of us just do it kind of without thinking because, well, it's just something we're supposed to do. It's a formality. There's meaning to those aprons. And so every time we put on our apron before walking into lodge, that's an opportunity for us to remind ourselves and to enter into a little meditation about what's the meaning of the apron and how is that helping me shift into what I'm supposed to be doing here in this lodge. So absolutely, objects can be very helpful.
I think objects can be helpful, but I will point out that anything external to you can be taken away from you. Whereas what you have inside, in your imagination, in your memory, it cannot be taken away from you, and can be brought with you anywhere at any time. So
yes,
I also think that liturgical churches often are good at using those moments that might otherwise be just passing moments to try to build in some thoughtfulness. For example, when a priest puts on his stole in many churches, there's a traditional prayer that goes with putting on a stole that reminds him of the words of Christ and my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Those kinds of moments can be incorporated into a practice without necessarily the burden of the 50,000 years of tradition or whatever. You can make those moments for yourself by being intentional about it. There's a famous story of a man who every day when he came home reached over and touched the tree that was outside his house when he came into his house, and finally one of his kids asked him why, and he said, well, I'm laying aside my work day. As I come in, I hang it on the tree outside my house. When I leave in the morning, I pick it back up. It's my way of reminding myself to not bring work into the house. That kind of thing can be very powerful. That's pretty good. Every now and then I have a good one.
Well, the problem is your now and thens are always. Yeah, it's not really now and then. It's just now.
When you die, I'm going to release a book and make $1 million.
We're going to have the David Riley isms.
Did you hear that, Chuck? If I die suddenly,
are you
to suspect?
You guys are breaking up on me over there.
Yep. So here's the plan.
Hey, you're breaking up on me over there, guys.
All right, hang out 1 second. Any better?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
David, you were about to say something profound.
Yeah, I was going to say if I die suddenly, you know who to blame. It's Nick, because he wants to release his book. But I think the plan.
It's really choppy on my. It's really choppy over here on my end.
What can we do?
Just gotta wait out the storm. Lost packets. While we're waiting for Chuck's internet to come back, let's tell you about one of our sponsors. Vitriol Shop, where you can buy the best Masonic t-shirts. That's Vitriol, Vitrol. Vitrol. No, I think it's eel. Again, vitriolshop.com. It's in the link in the description below.
We're going to link the description below.
We have a.
I never thought I would have a Julian of Norwich t-shirt, but now I do, thanks to Vitriol Shop.
I never thought I would know who that is. I still don't.
Julian of Norwich is one of my favorite Christian mystics.
Ah, well.
Julian,
yeah,
time's limited, Chuck. Time's very limited here.
Julian was.
I can hear you guys perfectly now.
Good.
Great. Glad to
Thanks
hear.
to Vitriol Shop.
Thank
The
you
link-
for Vitriol.
the link is going to be below.
You know, I have never shopped at Vitriol Shop, but I plan to immediately after this podcast.
Oh, well, thank you, Chuck.
Use the coupon code in the description below to save 15% off every single order because they messed up and made it that way. Anyway,
Because they love us.
Yeah.
So the plan is we're going to post this as a regular episode, and we hope many people hear Chuck and consider buying his book, Contemplative Masonry by C.R. Dunning Jr., available at Amazon and other locations. But also good to buy because the proceeds benefit the Scottish Rite Temple in Guthrie, Oklahoma, which is one of the most amazing Masonic buildings in the world. Amazing not just for the building itself, which is extraordinary, but also for the work that the Valley of Guthrie does. So
no, you can have him.
buy the book because Chuck is amazing, but Chuck is modest. Buy the book because Chuck is amazing. Also buy the book because the Valley of Guthrie is amazing. So
because it's really
we're posting this as a regular episode, but we're also going to post at least one, and I'm hoping Chuck will consider coming back and doing a series of guided meditations with us that people can download and use over and over and over again to help them in their meditative practice.
I would be very happy to do that. Absolutely.
So
What are we doing? Are we transitioning?
okay,
Okay, perfect. So before we transition, I want to say, so you've traveled around the country a bit since releasing this book, and anybody listening, Chuck is willing to come out to your lodge. You pay for it. And speak about the book and speak about contemplative masonry practices and basic applications of mindfulness and meditation and imagery for the craft, really. And so you've traveled around the country a bit talking about this book. What's been some feedback you've gotten from the book, and what have you learned after doing this at so many different lodges that all started?
Yeah. I would say that the biggest impression that has been made on me is just how much hunger there is for this all over the country. I mean, we've got guys that are joining the fraternity, looking for this sort of thing. They have been studying about Freemasonry on the internet. They have learned lots of things about it. They've read all of these great authors like Albert Pike. They know from their studies that Freemasonry is supposed to provide them with a contemplative experience, or at least the opportunity for contemplative experience. And so they came to the fraternity hungry for that. And so I think that I knew that was there. I mean, in the preface of the book, I talk about that's one of the reasons why I finally revealed myself as the author of the material. And I knew that, but I wasn't quite aware of how many want this as part of their Masonic experience. And another thing I wasn't quite aware of is how many guys, old timers, and I'm now within that group, right? But guys even older than me have quietly kind of said to me, this was one of the things that I really wanted to get out of my Masonic experience 30, 35, 40 years ago, and it wasn't. And so I've just kind of been doing it on my own, or I went to another organization and have been practicing with them. And it's been meaningful to me as a Mason, but I've never felt like I could talk about it before. And now I can. And I want to tell you, man, that is both humbling and heartbreaking to know that there have been many, many brothers in the fraternity who've been looking for this, wanting to share it with their brothers, but haven't felt free to do so. And we are I believe we are in a moment of renaissance within the fraternity where we have the opportunity to take the words of our ritual seriously so that contemplative practice is understood and supported as a real for Masons to pursue within the fraternity. And I'm more enthusiastic about that than I was when I published the book.
Yeah, my experience is that the younger the man joining the fraternity, the more it is likely that he's looking for exactly this kind of thing. The more that he expects that the ritual will be taken seriously and made a part of the lives of individual brothers, the higher the standard to which he holds his lodge. And I think that's fabulous. And it's one of the reasons that anytime people start talking down millennials, I jump on it and am quick to quash it, because I think they come to the fraternity with a lot to offer in terms of heart and hope and spirit.
I completely agree. I mean, it should go without saying that the millennials are the future of our fraternity. And if what we try to do is make them just repeat the things that have been done in the past and nothing else, then we'll continue to get the same results that we've been getting. And that's dwindling membership, uninteresting lodge experiences, and people leaving because they're not getting a worthwhile experience. And they know that they can find that elsewhere. So I say we meet those millennials where they're at. We give them what they're expecting. We give them what the ritual says we're about, and the future of the fraternity will look very bright.
So what have we not said that we should have? Anyone? We said everything we should? That's amazing. All right. So Nick's going to do the outro in a moment. Are you ready?
And
then we're going to do a guided meditation as a separate.
So cut it
file.
after. All right.
Cut it after that. All right. That way you can come back to just the guided meditation if that's all you're looking for, because you've listened to this episode and it's inspired you to give it a whirl.
But before we go, we just want to plug in the book one more time. Can I see the book?
Oh, yeah.
We're just going to plug in the book one more time again, guys.
Both books that we mentioned today, both Chuck Dunning's book, Contemplative Masonry, and The Cloud of Unknowing, will be in the description below. Again, benefits the Guthrie Scottish Rite.
Say it right here.
Guthrie.
Thank you.
Restoration Fund, which is a beautiful lodge building and they're doing great work there. They're both in the description below. You can buy it on Amazon.
And Vitriol. Again,
No,
Vitriol.
all right, we plugged them enough. All right. So, the end of this episode, and get ready for the mini episode coming up. So the fantastic photography on our website is courtesy of Brother Airman Sherman. Our theme song is currently under development.
Still.
Is this guy still on vacation? Dude's been on vacation for like 6 months.
This guy's been on meditation for a while.
I need to nag.
You think so?
Yeah.
Hey, if you're listening, answer David's email.
Duggan.
Our theme song's amazing, perfect. It's original. It's absolutely what we were looking for, and we're so grateful for it. And it's currently under development by Worshipful Christopher Duggan. Our website is currently maintained, curated, and lovingly tendered by myself. We're grateful for our Patreon sponsors, Jacob Salvik, Uriah Edwards, Arthur Schrilling, Patrick Harvey,
Right.
Christopher Patty,
Watch what you believe in.
and Vitriol Shop. Monks, I feel like we're forgetting somebody.
I hope not.
If we are, I'm so sorry. I'll get you back next time. To become a Patreon sponsor, you can donate any amount, one time per month. Doesn't matter. We're super grateful. It allows us to do book giveaways and continue doing what we love. Just visit our website at 3distinctknocks.org, and you can find additional episodes and all other content. For your esoteric and Masonic t-shirt needs, visit Vitriol Shop at vitriolshop.com and use the coupon code number 3 DK2017 for 15% off your order. Essential Canine supervision for this episode was provided by Zach and Falula, and the opinions expressed in this podcast and on our website are those of the individual contributors and do not represent the opinions of any lodge, Grand Lodge, or any Masonic body. I'm Nicholas Harvey, and I'm incredibly thankful for the brothers that have made this podcast and my Masonic journey so rich, interesting, challenging, and fulfilling. I hope 3 Distinct Knocks has helped you make some daily progress in Freemasonry, and I thank you for listening.